Hello and welcome. This is the first video of the perception process. And I'm here with Chris. There's two Chris's here. And Chris, who's on the call here, he's an amazing body worker. This guy, he's able to do things that not many other people can do. He's somebody who gets his clients results. And if you're anything like him, you're probably in that same ballpark of getting your clients massive results. You just want to tweak everything to make it perfect. So in this first video, we're going to go over just a few of the perception processes. Now, it's really going to be important to keep a separate notepad or a separate place for your notes so you can create a list, like a bank of all the different perception processes. I remember a few weeks ago, I went over this with a client, and basically at the end of like 8 weeks, they were like, so what are the perception processes? And I go, we already covered that. And they go, well, I don't have them. I'm like, well, whose fault is that? So definitely pays off to have a separate notepad so you can keep the running count. And what's going to happen is there's going to be about at least 40, at this time of this recording, there's 47. So there was 45, now there's 47. There's going to be 2 more added to this eventually, but that's going to take some time. Now, before we get into that even, how I came up with the perception process came up specifically when I was a hypnotist about 12, 13 years ago, and learning hypnosis, there's one major skill that they forced us to know about, but nobody was teaching at all, and that was pattern recognition. How do you recognize patterns in someone to either know when they're either in hypnosis, going to hypnosis, or out of hypnosis? It makes a difference when you're on the street corner talking to somebody, and you notice when someone's in a suggestible state. Now what you say is really going to impact their subconscious. Or you're up on stage speaking and you're reading the audience. It really pays off. It not only just puts money in your pocket, but also creates the biggest impact you can make either on a mass scale or a one-on-one level, knowing where someone's at psychologically. Now, psychologically, that can be spiritually, that can be physically. You know, there's many different ways of looking at this. So this, over the years, I've come up with a bank of all the different ways of figuring this out. Now, remember back in the day, my hypnosis teacher, his name was a guy named Casey Johnson. Guy's a genius. I mean, I've still never seen anybody to this day who is as smart as this guy. He's just one of those people you would call like a perfect being. Like, guy never makes any mistakes. Like, he just does things perfectly. And I asked him, I said, would you ever teach a class on pattern recognition? And he just sighed and said, Chris, everyone has been demanding that of me. But he's like, but I don't know how I would even put that on. He's like, how do you teach somebody how to look for minute expressions like breathing patterns, blood pressure changes, changes in skin tone, changes in senses of humor, pupil dilation, body stillness? I'm like, well, yeah, that's a good point. I'm like, that does take like and it took me years to just remind myself to look for those things. And then when you remind yourself to look for those things, oh my God, life becomes so different because now you're seeing all these little blind spots that maybe in the past you've walked away from an interaction with a client or somebody and said, why did it happen that way? But with the perception, with knowing pattern recognition on a hypnotic skill level, it's deeply beneficial. But then I got curious. I was like, how do I find out all the different ways somebody processes information? So I never walk away from an interaction guessing. So in doing this, there's many different categories. So there's 47 of these things right now, and this might seem overwhelming. But in reality, when we go over it, my job here is to make this seem so recognizable that you don't look at it like trying to analyze somebody and memorize 47 different things. Instead, these things are supposed to pop out to you. Just like when someone's great at chess, everyone thinks that chess players are smart. But on the contrary, the best chess players in the world are simply chess players that can recognize patterns that they've seen before. So what happens is people that are great at chess are only really great at memorizing and recognizing patterns they've seen before from playing so often. So the same goes for this, and this is why this works the best with people that are well-versed in their craft, because They're already in the process of doing things. So this is an amazing supplement that applies not just to your clientele, but also to your marketing. A lot of people I work with, maybe people listening in here, are going to have ideal clients, client avatars, audiences they want to reach. And they most likely come across working with one or two types of people because they resonate the most with them. So in these perception processes, you're going to see your clients' behavior in here. You're also going to see behaviors that you've seen before, not sure how to handle, or not sure what to say about it or what to do about it. This should cover so much ground that at this point, you should have an inarguable ability to know where anyone is at and know where to take them. So let's jump into the first few. So today we're going to cover willpower, perception, emotion, and a few other ones. We're just going to clarify just the three. Now, if you're on this call right now, you've probably seen me on my content post about willpower, perception, and emotion. And yeah, they're pretty important. They're pretty awesome. But they're not the be-all, end-all. Not nearly as much. In fact, the other ones we're going to go over today are just as powerful. So willpower-based people are people that say, it's hard, but I'll do it anyway. This is like Nike's marketing. This is only about 10 to 20%, maybe 30% of all people out there that you're going to work with. These are people that do what you say. No matter how hard it is, they just do it. Some would call these people ideal clients, but really, they're just people that do what you say. They'll do it and they'll come back with feedback. These are people whose progress in life is going to be very linear. You give them a plan, they will do the plan, and they'll make linear progress over time. Very few blips in between. Willpower people just push through things. They don't ask too many questions, they just go along with it. Next is perceptive people. Perceptive people say, change the way I think of things, and then the things I want to do become easy. These are people where they have a task, a very specific task. If you reframe things, if you give them a different metaphor to play with, if you use hypnosis in this play, if you're a hypnotist, if you can change their mind about things. An example of this is somebody who's afraid of closing deals on sales calls. If they're perceptive, you want to show them that a sales call is like a dance. It's like doing salsa. It's a beautiful dance, but in order for the dance to happen, there has to be physical resistance on both sides. So you can feel the other person. There must be tension. And in that way, teaching a perceptive person that on a sales call, in this example, you have to have tension and you have to make shit awkward sometimes. But that's part of the dance. That's what makes the beauty. And have them look for the beauty. Perceptive people also have a different type of progress. Usually perceptive people, their progress is sporadic. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. But at the end of the day, willpower-based people, perceptive-based people, they all arrive to the same goal at the same time. But knowing this in advance, either by yourself or by your clients, it's good to know because now you'll know that with the ebbs and flows, if you're a perceptive person, that's totally normal. And to not fall for the illusion. Perceptive-based people say things like, it seems kind of hazy to me. And I can't figure that out. Yeah, it's like a switch is flipped. It's always some kind of metaphor behind how they describe a problem. Now, emotional-based people are people that say, change the way I feel, and then I can do anything. Think of people like Beyonce or Oprah. They have massive, massive potential. And then you've seen people like Oprah fall off the wagon and gain 100 pounds because emotional-based people, they're the most volatile progress. If their emotions are off, they can't do barely the most simplest task. But their emotions are on, they will do things better than anybody else. Good example is I just took on this new client just a few weeks ago that said she joined this other she joined a sales program a few months ago. And just by the sheer excitement and joy of joining the program, she closed 3 new clients in the first 2 days. But then she hasn't closed anything for the remainder of that program she was in. She couldn't figure out why. Well, because the group she was in was a willpower-based group. It was like a very just do it, get calls booked, close deals. She's very emotional. She was emotionally in the right place in the beginning of that program. Literally learned nothing from the program and still was able to do what she wasn't able to do for years in 2 days because her emotions are in the right place. So my guidance to her was we're focusing on her emotional state. We want to get her emotional state in the right place every single day before taking any actions on anything. It makes no sense. Now, struggle across the board can happen when a perceptive person is trying to be a willpower-based person or emotional-based person. Anytime somebody who's in their element, now, before I get into that actually, someone who's predominant in one could also be predominant in another. So for example, I know that I am definitely perceptive and willpower-based. I'm more perceptive and then I'm willpower-based second. I'm not that emotional. So one person can be one major one and then a secondary one. You just simply use both. You mix both around. Everyone has their own cocktail mix. A good example, if someone is perceptive or willpower based, trying to use emotional techniques and getting them emotional and talking about vulnerability and how they feel, they'll do it, but it's not going to be home for them. And if you want someone to transform on any level, you want to meet them where they're at. Most coaches that I talk to, they try to pull other people into their realm because that's what they know, but really it's meeting the client where they're at. A lot of the times you'll see a perceptive person trying to be willpower based or emotional people be willpower based. And then their life sucks. Reason why is because they're trying to push forward like a willpower based person would, but they just get so frustrated. They get so emotional because they're emotional based. Perceptive people say, I'm trying to just do it. I can't just do it because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense of things. So they're perceptive, trying to be willpower based. Willpower based people will try to be vulnerable and then things won't work out for them. So I'm trying to be vulnerable, it's not working. So the first thing I always look at, the first thing that pops out to me in terms of like the big picture master switches to helping someone get back on track is, are they willpower, perceptive, or emotional? Now these came about, these 3 things came about through Dr. Donnie Epstein from Network Spinal Analysis. I went to a NSA session a few years ago, and I noticed they had this triangle diagram. But when they explained it, it was on a very low and holistic level, and I took it upon myself to expand upon these. And then I found legitimate connections to the way people process for the sole purpose of helping them transform or get back on track in their life. Somebody who is willpower based also loves structure. They love schedules. Somebody who's perceptive based also doesn't work well with schedules too much, but instead ballpark to-do lists. And emotional people go even more vague. Not too much structure, but a somewhat idea of what's going to happen during the day. Now, later on, we're going to talk about logic versus spirituality and how that plays a part in it. And we're also going to talk about masculine and feminine and how that plays a part and how feminine is different from being emotional. But for now, those are the 3. So Chris, if you have any questions so far, or because you are great at asking questions, is there anything I'm missing? Or is there anything that you'd like to learn more about these three at all?
I wanted the last couple of things you covered. Actually, I had a couple of questions. There's a lot of good stuff you just put out. Um, so willpower. You said as far as schedule, they like to be very structured, right? They want things structured and just this is what I need to do. This is my day done. And then perceptive, you said doesn't really work well with schedules, but more of big picture lists. That's what you said, right?
Yep.
And then the emotional was you said even more kind of vague on how they get things done.
Yes, even vaguer, even more. Yeah, more vague.
Okay. Um, could we go? I feel like since I feel like what would you say my two types are? Like I feel like I'm primarily perceptive and emotional. Um,
Yeah,
but
I would agree. And the reason why I would agree is because, well, one, your content, you always show people a different way of doing things. You're perceptive in the way where you even said before that you hired a business coach and everything's been great, but now they're telling you to do things that just require to sit down and get it done. And it's been very difficult. You even feel like how does that feel? Like with this person that you hired that is a business coach, that makes you feel inner struggle with the way they do things. Explain to me, how does that make you feel?
well, recently, it freaking kind of just pissed me off. Uh, like it's like so. I'll give you a specific example. She was telling me like she's like, oh, you need more consistency or whatever, right? Um, with what I don't even know what I need to even get clarity on that. But it was like, listen, for like 3 months I've been trying to figure out what I really want to do, and I'm like, and I've been getting told to like, oh, we need to get clear on your budget and like you need to get clear on your content schedule and all this stuff, and all that stuff makes me want to do is smash my head into a wall. Um, to be honest. And so yeah, and then like and then it kind of puts me like it makes me feel like kind of like blocked up, right? I'm like, oh well, I need to get this stuff done, for my business instead of like flowing naturally, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you're feeling the urge to become willpower based when you're not. And then you're getting angry, you're getting frustrated when she tries to introduce structure into your life.
Yeah.
Even though you and I both know from your point of view, it's like your life works pretty good. Like you're not a struggling artist. You have consistent clients. You built yourself up to a place where you have a pretty fairly comfortable lifestyle that I'm sure that if you stayed at that level for the rest of your life, wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
So for this person to come along and try to change up your current system is going to put unnecessary stress on you. Also, if you're doing things in your way and there's less structure and they're getting frustrated because there's no structure in business, yeah, is definitely important. But if you're perceptive, you can still have structure. You're not totally, gone with the wind. To be totally willpower based is to have like all these things nailed down. Like, yeah, you're going to have a budget. Yeah, you're going to have other things in play eventually when you get clear. But for you to get clear, a schedule is not the first thing on the list. In fact, the schedule is like the last thing you have to worry about.
Yeah.
For you to get clear is going to take getting into the right emotional place. Like a really good morning routine for you would really pay off. Like getting you vibrating joy.
Yeah.
And then with your perception, doing things that you don't normally do in order to get your brain thinking in different ways. So for example, you can do it on a small level, like brushing your teeth on the opposite side, opposite arm, showering with the lights off, or learning to play an instrument, like borrowing an instrument from a friend for a week, or trying a new activity, something to get your brain out of that rut that has been stopping creativity. And then from there, when you have an idea of what you want to do, it'll make sense, and then two, it'll feel right. And then you start building structure around that. But for you,
Yeah.
the way things make sense is number one. Number two for you is how you feel about it. It has to feel right. Once it makes sense and it feels right, boom, now you can start building it out. Now you can build a budget for your Facebook ads. Now you can create a content schedule because the thoughts will be flowing out of you. Now you just put them on paper and now you pretty much automated the rest.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah. Yes. That's exactly it.
And a lot of the same things like for your business too, like if you have a client avatar or the kind of person you want to work with, the way you would figure out who your client avatar is or is going to be is you want to get into the feeling body and really like imagine is the word. Feeling body and imagine. Imagine how great life would be working with the best clients ever. And then you imagine who you've worked with before. That was really fun to work with, or someone in the future that you would love to work with. And then you simply go and interview that person. But you'd interview them with an immense sense of curiosity and openness. So you gather the most information. That way, the willpower-based stuff takes care of itself.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of creating content, you just look at the language that your ideal client used on the call with you. No more guesswork, no more thinking, no more trying to stay motivated, no more trying to stay creative. It's all referencing and then putting into stories or however you do your content.
Yeah.
Now and then for your own life too, in your own performance, you might, let's say you want to gain 20 pounds of muscle. Let's just say you have a fitness goal. You know that you're perceptive and emotional based. So step one is waking up. Let's say if you go to the gym in the morning and it's having an emotional response towards your goals. Listening to like an inspirational audio or watching an inspirational video on your way to the gym. And then when you're there, you're going hard as you can for like 2 straight weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then taking 2 weeks off. Like you have your ups and downs, your sporadic training. Like there's classes for people like you. It's called muscle confusion. And they do that because think about that. If someone doesn't know how to work out or doesn't know the body, and they hear muscle confusion, you want to confuse the muscles so they grow. To the perceptive person, they go, wow, that sounds like it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
To the willpower person, they'll hear them be like, that's horse crap. Just do the damn work.
Yeah. Yep.
Emotional-based people do Zumba, like men and women.
Yeah.
Because it makes them feel great. It's emotionally involved. It's endorphins flowing, not too much heavy lifting. So we see these everywhere. You see it in marketing too. Look at Dove. Dove is very emotional-based marketing. Nike is very willpower-based marketing. I can't think of any perceptive-based marketing at this point, but if I find one, I'll put that like a link down below to some commercials. So you can see that in someone's marketing, they're also using willpower, perception, and emotion. And remember, if your clients come to you, or your ideal client even, if they have a struggle, listening to how they talk about the struggle is really important because that tells you what they really are, how they really process things. They might say, I'm trying to do the work, but I just can't figure out why it's not working. Like if it takes like figuring things out, if it seems really difficult, but they can't find another way of looking at it. If things are hazy, or they describe it in a metaphor, it's perceptive. If it's emotional, they're going to talk about how they feel. I just feel so frustrated. My hands are shaking. I just felt so blank. Insert emotion here. Now, another couple of these perception processes that are going to tie into these directly, and they all tie into each other. So at some point of even these trainings, like someone's going to watch these and they're going to be confused. But that confusion is natural. So another two that are really important are associated and dissociated. So associated is when somebody is in their body. Like Chris, do me a favor for a second. Come off mute.
Yep.
We're going to figure out if you're associated or dissociated in a bunch of different ways.
Okay.
Most direct way first. Chris, if you close your eyes and you simply think of your body,
Yep.
are you inside your body or outside your body?
Yeah, outside my body.
And how do you know?
I see my body like from like looking at it like from the outside.
Oh, so you're looking at your body from the outside. Okay. Cool. So open your eyes. Now let me ask you a more indirect way of the same thing. Chris, do you like scary movies?
Yeah.
Cool. So now the reason why I ask is because most people that are dissociated enjoy scary movies. Someone who's really associated in their body, a scary movie makes them feel icky because they're too empathetic. They're too feeling into whatever they're seeing. So they don't like to watch violent stuff. They don't like to watch scary stuff because it just makes them feel weird. There's somebody who would have to watch a comedy after watching a scary movie so they can sleep. Someone who is associated is able to feel their thoughts. So anxious people, but also confident people. Somebody who is dissociated can think their thoughts, but they're not really affected by them too much. Depends on how far dissociated they are or how closely associated they are. What's more important right now is that you want to get somebody thinking and feeling their thoughts when you're working with them. So if I said, Chris, think of your favorite, your most amazing, most cherished memory. If you start explaining that memory to me and I see that you're not getting emotionally involved, you're not using your hands, you're not using your eyes, you're not using tonality to express your most amazing moment ever, then I know that you're probably not fully going there. And for me to guide you either on a sales call or in a therapeutic or a professional way, if I want to motivate you or get you to feel things differently, I need you to be associated in your body. So what I can do to get you associated, I can just simply ask you to close your eyes, step into your body, and look at the tip of your nose through your own eyes and feel the chair you're sitting in and bring attention to all the different things inside your body, like your heartbeat, the ebb and flow of your breath, the temperature of your right hand versus the temperature of your left hand. Things to make you notice your body so that what happens is all emotions and thoughts become more vivid. So in your case, Chris, if you're working with someone in an emotional way and they're naturally dissociated, it's critical to get them associated first, which will take 3 to 5 minutes. But now the work you do with them is going to be way more powerful.
So I want to share something on this because I know we talked about this like last time.
Yep.
A little bit.
Are you about to go into a story? That'd be perfect.
Yeah, I am.
Perfect. Go for it. I'm going to go on mute for a second. It's about to get loud by me, so just keep talking.
Okay. Yeah. So I actually, like, when we talked about it, like, the way I work is, like, when things make sense to me, and I'm a big experimenter, right? Like, I use things right away. So I actually, like, I think the next day I used this on a client call, and I was just checking because this person typically has a hard time, like, getting to that emotional thing to kind of more, I would usually call it numb, but, now we got this terminology to use here. And so, yeah, I'm like, I had him do that. Like, right. Like, I want to like, look at your body. Like, how are you looking at it? And it was like that, dissociated right from the outside. And I basically just used what you said, which was, had her close her eyes, had her feel herself in the chair, feel the temperature, body, heartbeat. What was she basically smelling, seeing, all that kind of stuff. And then I had her like reimagine, okay, now look at your body now. And then you're seeing it from the outside to the inside. She was seeing it from the inside. And then when I went into my actual process of like clearing out the emotional stuff and things we did, it was much more powerful. And what's cool is I actually gave her that as an exercise to get into before she was doing the stuff that she needed to do, because she was working with like a lot of procrastination and stuff and all that. So it was really, really simple. I think, yeah, it literally took me like 2 minutes, but it added this extra layer of just like power to the whole session.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And there's different ways when we get into like the breakthrough method, we'll talk about ways of utilizing this to even a bigger result. Like Um, like there are ways of making people learn faster, just focusing on these two things.
Sweet.
Also, getting them clarity. You want to play, you play back and forth as associated versus dissociated. It's really cool. And at that point, you have a chance to really, it's up to you by the breakthrough method to start leading the person to either want to work with you all the time or never rely on you again. It's completely up to you.
Yep.
So now another cool thing about associated and dissociated is that somebody's learning level will be highly influenced by this. We'll talk more about like ADHD and how that plays a role in like people learning, but that's for another time. That's when we get into brainwaves, how to recognize brainwaves. But with associated people, you look at people in like for specifically students, elementary and high school students that are in bad neighborhoods. Usually what happens is the grades overall are low. And the reason why, let's look at Detroit, for example, Detroit, Michigan, USA. One of the worst school systems in the country, and also one of the most violent places to live. When a child lives in that neighborhood, they're going to be naturally dissociated. They have to be. That's the only way they're going to survive. They get beat up at home by their parents, and they wind up getting beat up by gangs, and they join gangs. And the way gangs do initiations, they beat you up because they want you to be so dissociated that you feel no pain. That way, if they ever ask you to do something like kill someone you love, you'll do it, and you won't feel too much about it. And a lot of times that behavior is rewarded in gang systems. That's why the like rap songs, not all rap songs, but you hear in some like gangster rap songs, they take pride in not caring because that's the reward system they have. The less you care, the higher up the chain you go. The only problem with that is when those kids go back into school, now they're highly dissociated. It's hard to retain any knowledge when they're dissociated, so their grades go down. There was a scenario in Detroit where they hired psychologists to come in and try to fix this problem. The psychologists, all of them said, oh, they're too dissociated. And they were right. But what they were doing was they had them step into the school and make them really, really associated. But what happened was the kids would walk out of school, still dissociated, get the crap beat out of them, which would be really painful because remember they would feel everything. So they would then become even more dissociated than before. Then they go back to school, twice as dissociated, and the grades get even lower, if that's possible. Then they hired a team of the students that go to my college, psychoneurologists. They came in, they found the exact same thing happened. The only problem, though, that now they educated the students on how to associate when they're in school and how to dissociate when they're outside of school so they can go through life without suffering. This is like, for most of these kids, remember, getting good grades is one of their only ways out of that situation. So it's imperative that they have better learning. Through doing that, grades went up, and a lot of like now you see that Detroit's, I don't know if you see it on in the news or at all, but Detroit's economy is starting to change. Now they have affordable housing for people getting out of like going into that are going to apply to a college, and things are turning around little by little, not overnight, but things are changing. And one big thing that they use to change people here is association versus dissociation. When you speak in front of an audience and you're sharing a story that you know is very emotional and you're going into the emotion as well, if your audience isn't responding, they're probably dissociated. So what you do is you either do an exercise with them right there on the spot, or you start telling them to think about these things and you just directly tell them to feel it. You just watch their faces, watch how their eyes swell up over time, and that's how you know who is participating, who is associated. So Chris, any questions on these so far? Hey, Chris, you there?
I was just talking to myself on mute. Yeah, no, I don't have any specific questions right now, I'm just taking this on. This is a lot of like fantastic stuff right here.
Good. Now, what's going to happen is there are things you're going to discover in your clients and in yourself that we're not going to cover, but you're going to see them. And you're going to know it makes sense. For example, there's a woman I work with right now. She's emotional based. And before working with me, she was working with an emotional mindset coach. And this person in particular, I'm not going to say who it is. It doesn't matter who it is, but someone who doesn't do their job well. Let's put it that way. And this woman wanted to be put in a good place emotionally. And here she was digging up traumas and digging up other old pains. And this person she was working with was like, no, you have to work through these things in order for your business to grow, which that's debatable. I'm not going to get into that. But this is for sure. She came to me trying to dig her way out of this emotional hole that she was put in by this coach. So when I asked her how she feels, obviously from my point of view, she was a very emotional based person. When she's in a good place emotionally, she works out she's emotional and she's willpower based. So she's emotional, she has structure, which is really powerful. So she's in great shape, great life, but when it's off, she disappears. You can't find her anywhere. So here I'm asking her questions and I'm letting her know, like, listen, I don't need for you to go into the emotion too much. I'm not trying to do the same thing that your coach did. I just wanted to see how you operate, that's all. And when she talks about her emotions, you can tell she's very detached. She's using the words, her mouth is moving, talking about it, but her body is very still. So she's emotional based, but she's also dissociated. And I wasn't too sure, but so I asked, I said, let me ask you a question. Are you currently thinking of the thoughts, but are not allowing yourself to feel the emotion? And she says, that's exactly what I'm doing. I go, why do you think that is? And she was like, well, because my last coach would have me dig into the emotion and it's an icky place. I don't want to go there right now. And cool. It's totally fine. So now for me to help her get back into a state of thriving, an ongoing thing we're going to have to work on is getting her emotional based and associated and feeling those feelings so she can process them the right way. Because if not, something's going to be on her mind for days or weeks or months, and it's going to emotionally constipate her. So just know that when you'll hear distant language from a willpower, perceptive, or emotional person, they're probably associated or dissociated, probably dissociated. If they kind of have a monotone voice and they have like pauses and like they can't really recall, like they can't recall memories too much, and they kind of, like they can't like find the words. They're probably dissociated.
Yeah, makes sense.
On the other hand, someone who's like super in the emotion and they are affected highly by the emotion. Let's say they talk about a trauma or an emotion. Let's just say emotion for now. They talk about an emotion, they're bringing it up, and now they're just getting so overworked and manic, and they're crying. And tears are good when you're doing things like on a sales call, but only so many tears until it's time to wake up and on to the next part. So if they're associate in their body, it'll help for you to take them outside of their body so they can focus when the emotions are too high and the feelings are too high. Take someone who's on an airplane. We'll go over more of this in the breakthrough method and the releasing unconscious triggers, but if they're on an airplane, they get anxious because there's turbulence. You just simply have them dissociate. And now they can still feel the emotions, but they're not really suffering through the emotions. In association and dissociation, although somebody has a default of what they currently are, that can change over time. And it can also change through environment, but it can change through conscious force as well. You can have them, like before every call with you, just if they're really dissociated, have them reassociate. And if they keep showing up to calls with you, or they keep showing up and they're still dissociated, ask them if they're on any medications, because there's a good chance they're on some kind of dissociative medication. I was working with a woman who was struggling with her business, and she would not do a word I said. And I was like, that's interesting. And then I found she was getting these, what are they called? Lithium injections.
Ooh, yeah.
And every week She seemed happy, but also so not there in the conversation, so not present. So I asked about it, and then that's when that came out. And I was like, holy crap. I'm like, I am not going to get through to you. So far we covered willpower, perception, emotion, association, dissociation, how those two tie in. Another big thing to look at when looking at, let's see what makes the most sense here, is their self-esteem level. Now there's 4 types of self-esteem. There's high self-esteem that's stable, high self-esteem that's unstable, low self-esteem that's stable, low self-esteem that's unstable. For example, somebody can be high self-esteem naturally, but the second something rocks their world, suddenly they have low self-esteem. That's somebody who has unstable high self-esteem. The reason why these are really important to know and why they'll save you so much time is because I see a lot of mindset and emotional coaches out there. They will take that and pick it apart and make that the main thing that they're going to help them with. Really, it's just a perception process. So a good example of how this gets misconstrued is really amazing coaches, really amazing, let's say like a speaker who is also an online coach, for example, does great stuff, but the second she hears one negative comment, it's like, I'm a failure. I knew it. Why does everyone hate me? Unstable high self-esteem.
Yeah.
What people and coaches would like to do, would do for 6 to 10 weeks at a time with that is say, hey, let's work on that issue you have with approval of others. It's like, well, that requires making up stories. That requires fighting an invisible dragon. I don't know. I mean, there's probably ways around there that work great and quickly, but as you and I both know, anytime there's an emotional thing going on, emotions have no concept of time.
Yeah.
So when someone says, oh, it's going to take a lot of time to get rid of this emotion, it's a lie. It takes minutes at most.
Yep.
You can think back to a time you were really happy, and then within minutes, you're going to feel just as happy. And then from there, we can either expand it even more, happier than you ever felt in your entire life. But really, we could do this in a room where there's no activity. And then you can anchor that to something else. You can override a negative emotion with that new happiness. Do all kinds of stuff. So if someone says like, hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about we'll talk about talking about problems and how that plays out later on. But someone's self-esteem, you look at by how they take compliments. If every compliment is always modest and it's always, oh no, I'm not. When someone has stable, low self-esteem, they're very difficult to work with because if they think that they're terrible and you think that they're amazing and you tell them they're amazing, what will happen is they'll start to believe that you're a liar. And then they won't trust you because they truly believe that they're not. In that situation, what you would do is just let them know, like, this is what I see, this is what I experience, and you just put a line in the sand. If you want to keep working with me, what's going to have to happen is this. If I give you a compliment, it's because I'm being serious.
Yep.
Either as a professional or whatever. But even still, you can't bank on getting results for that person. At least not where they're at right there in life. So if you're on a sales call, for example, and you say, wow, like I see your stuff online and I see you do stuff and it looks amazing. And they go, oh, no, it's not. And they really start to try to convince you that it's not. Red flag. Massive, massive red flag. Not only just for you working with your own experience working with them, but also for your success rate and the culture of your clientele. If you're in a group setting, that person comes into the group, prepare that nothing will ever go right, even when it is going right.
Yeah. I've worked with some of those. That's painful.
It is. And can they change? That's debatable. Are you the person to change them? That's better eat your Wheaties that morning because you can, but it just takes a lot of energy.
Well, Yeah, and I'd say that's the thing. Like, it's like I'm looking at these four types of steam, right? And it's like obviously people can shift out of those. Um, but do you, like you just said, do you want to be the person that's helping them shift out of that? And at my point in my life, I'd be like, no, 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 no.
Yeah, maybe someone listening to this is like a self-esteem coach. Who knows? But if so, then awesome. And then in that case, whoever I work with in the future that can fix that, they will get a free referral in
Yep,
these meetings all times.
exactly.
But our main purpose as a coach here is to make life as effective and as easy as possible, so that we can use our energy and our thinking for things that really matter to us, like bigger things. Like the whole point, at least in my own business too, is to build a business around my lifestyle, not the other way around. Like there's no point. Like some people like to work 12 hours a day. I found that people just starting out in their business and people that make $1 million a month genuinely can be putting in 4 hours a day if they really just simply did the right 3 to 5 actions per day, and that's it. Some people need to have that extra whatever, and that's fine. But for the sole purpose of this training, we want to make life as simple as possible. No frills, although there are 47 of these things. Make it in a way that's going to be super easy for us to learn. So in the next video, the next training, we're going to go over the suggestibility types. I want to spend some time breaking down the 4 types of masculine and feminine and how that plays a role in all this.
Sweet.
Before I go, do you have any other questions about how to integrate these, how this works for you, how this works for your clients, anything in between?
No, like I said, I started using some of it like, last week, and it was really, really helpful. And then drilling down to even more today, like has made it even more clear. So I'm trying to think if I have any. I don't think I have any questions. It's more like, especially talking about the perceptive and emotional, like that's like I'm in context of me personally, that hit me right in the head, because that's how I've operated. And what's done really well for me in business. And the moment, yeah, like someone's trying to put me like we talked about, structure is important, but the moment someone tried to have me put in structure without proper context and proper clarity, it's freaking like painful. So, this is very helpful with that. And then I would say too, is like you mentioned, like specifically around the fitness goal, like getting that emotional response. And it's not just to fitness goals, but to anything. But then you said something that's very interesting that I hadn't thought of before, which was, go hard as you can for 2 to 3 weeks, then like 2 weeks off, which was a very interesting concept to me that I hadn't thought of.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of another way of using willpower versus perceptive progress. I call them progress presets. So like your progress in the future of your goal might not be perfect, but knowing in advance will keep your confidence level high so that you can get through the whole thing.
Yes.
So there's a friend I have, one is Anthony and one is Eli. They both, let's say they both have their goal of hitting $1 million in a year in 12 months. Today is January 1st. Anthony will make between $30,000 to $50,000 the first month, and then he'll make 40 to 60 the next, 80 to 100, and then 100 to 110, 110 to 120, and so on and so forth. And after a year, very predictable straight line from where he's at, steady growth to the very top, to $1 million. There'd be very little deviation for Anthony. It almost looked like he's a machine, like just has a goal and does the work. He will be at the gym every day at 6 a.m., never miss a day. His whole life will be in the same, will stay steady. Then you have someone like Eli, who is strictly perceptive. Eli has a goal of $1 million after 12 months. January 1st, first 2 weeks makes $180,000, and then 2 weeks hanging out. Next month makes $200,000 in the first 2 weeks, and then decides to close up shop everything and go to Bali for 3 months, where nothing really gets done. So nothing happens in 3 months. Comes back, $280,000 in the month of May. 1 month off, 3 months of traveling hard, doing seminars, booking deals. Now he's at like $800,000 by August, September. 2 months off, finishes the month hard of December with hitting like 300 grand. At the end of the 12 months, they both hit their goals. Both are very versed in what they do. Both got there 2 very different ways, but both just went with it. Eli never stopped and asked like, well, I made nothing this month, so I must be a failure. Instead, he just, all right, well, I can relax a little bit. I feel it's best for me to relax. He would even say, I got to go to Bali to get my mind right. So think about that. If Eli, perceptive person, says, I need to take some time off to get my mind right, what does he do? He doesn't go and relax. He goes to Bali, but he goes to Bali for adventure. So he's doing something with his energy. He's working hard. He's playing harder. Someone like Anthony did no travel, took no days off, just did the work day in, day out. He made the money-making moves into habits. So in that way, they both got to the same place, just a little different. If you're perceptive based, then it's going to be similar. Like you're going to have to take some. If you're trying to push forward, it's not going to work. Listen to your body, listen to your mind. Like, how's your morning routine? Have you been doing the same activities every single day in, day out? Maybe it's time for a change. Just simply adding a new activity. I added capoeira to my activities back in December. And man, I'll tell you what, that shifted my inspiration massively. Massively. And then I was doing capoeira religiously since June of this year. And now I just took 2 months off. And I can't explain why, other than I'm perceptive. And I know that like it was getting too stressful for me, having to go to class for so many hours. Took time off. And now my life has taken a different direction. And it's a great direction. It's where I wanted to go. But I had to take time off from these things. It's always this ebb and flow of progress. You'll even see my posts and my content. I'll be like consistently posting all the time. And then I back off a little bit, but I'm consciously aware that I'm doing it.
Yeah, I'm just like that.
Yeah, and that's fine. But what has to fill in the gap there, if you're going to do content online, the number one algorithm that never changes on Facebook or Instagram is going to be consistency. So we have to post something. That's more on that later. But you might go hard in your business for a few months and then take a few weeks off, or not a few weeks off, but just take some time to just take the foot off the gas pedal a little bit so you can focus on other things. And that's perfectly healthy. There is a way to sustain both. We'll get into another time, but I'm going to end the recording here before we get too off the tangent here. And next week we're going to go over the suggestibility types and the 4 types of masculine and feminine.